Okay, looks like this is live. All right, thank you everyone for bearing with me today. I had a couple time changes and the tech was not working for me for the last 20 minutes. I've been trying to get all of this working. So um, if you are around, drop a comment and let me know that you're here. I'm gonna pull up my phone just to see if I can make sure it's working on this end as well. And we'll get started pretty soon. Actually, I'm gonna just tag. I think I can tag everyone and see. Okay, I put that in there. I see it, which is good. Hopefully that's not annoying. I'm gonna see if I can pull up comments on my end. Okay, hi Danielle, wonderful. All right, so I have one, so that is a success. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Today I will be talking about Hades as a deity. And again, thank you for bearing with me for time changes today. I had to mix a few things up in my schedule. So I am super excited about this topic. It is going to be a little bit of a lengthier live. I have a lot of notes on this topic, and I'm definitely open to answering questions to the best of my abilities. So if you have any throughout the time that you're watching today or throughout the replay, let me know. And I'm actually kind of glad that we're doing it in the evening. I normally do mine during the day, but I kind of like this. It's almost 7 o'clock in California, so it's still light outside as you can see. But I think one thing that's kind of cool is that, as I'm doing this live, it's going to get darker and darker, which I kind of like for, especially if we're working with Hades here. All right, so let me talk a little bit about Hades. So I guess to start off, actually, I do have some questions for you. And if you're watching the replay, please be sure to add these in as well. Definitely a great way to get some participation into the live. So my first question is, what do you know about Hades? I think most of us have heard of Hades. And when you think about Hades, what is it that you think about? What do you know about him? And that's question one is, what do you know about Hades? Question two is, how do you feel about Hades? So whether you know much about him or not, so kind of the other one's a little bit more factual, and this one is more about what you feel, whether you know who he is or not. Like when you hear that name, what is it that you feel? Hi, Billy Joe, welcome in. All right, Danielle said she knows that he's the ruler of the underworld, but you don't know too much about him. Well, that is a really good start. He definitely is the ruler of the underworld, so that is a great one. Hi, Em, welcome in. I am late too, so I'm glad you can make it. So I'll repeat those questions again. So the first question is, what do you know about Hades? And question two is, how do you feel about him? And you can add those in or any thoughts throughout the live, and I'll keep coming back and checking the comments. But you may have already seen my Persephone live. She is my main deity and goddess, and so moving over to working with Hades was actually a really natural transition. So I know that's pretty common for a lot of people, whether they start working with Hades first or they start working with Persephone first. They are the king and queen of the underworld, so I feel like it is pretty natural, just kind of transition over. But just like my story with Persephone, I started off with a lot of misconceptions about Hades, and I really was not drawn to him. And in fact, I was not drawn to Persephone either, but just ended up working with her. And then, of course, like they're a pair, so it's like if you're friends with somebody, you're going to end up getting to know their partner as well, right? And it's just kind of how it works. But at first I was like, Hades, I don't know about this guy. And actually, it took a few years after I was really solidly working with Persephone before I even started dabbling working with him. And I will get more into my experiences with him later in this live. But first, I want to get just some more information about him out there. So, Hades is the ruler of the underworld, and he is one of the main brothers. Through all of the different realms. We have Zeus and Poseidon as the others, and then of course he is married to Persephone as the queen of the underworld. So within his myths, his main myth is going to be his origin story. And it's not really his myth. He actually doesn't have any myths to himself. He kind of just piggybacks on others' myths. But the one that is, I think, the one that really tells like who he is his origin story. So Hades shares the same parents as Zeus and all the other Olympians. Well, maybe not all, but the original Olympians. And he was born from the ancient Titans, Kronos and Rhea. So Kronos swallowed all of his children based on a prophecy stating that they would overthrow him. And so as soon as he was born, he got swallowed by his dad. Probably not fun. So he just kind of went straight to the underworld in one way within his own life. And then Rhea, she started to get a little bit smarter, and she's like, okay, I don't want him to eat this child, and so I'm going to have him eat a rock instead. And that was when Zeus was born. So he ate a rock, and I guess he didn't realize he ate a rock instead of a child. And Rhea hid Zeus in an island until he was old enough. And then when he was old enough, he actually tricked his father into, I think he was drinking some type of potion, and it made him vomit. And so he vomited all of his siblings, including Hades, up. So now they're all, they've been regurgitated onto the earth. There's a little bit of like a death and rebirth cycle already there. And so then all of the siblings started fighting Zeus. Well, actually a Cyclops came in first, and he gave each of them a different weapon to be able to fight against their father. So Zeus was given a thunderbolt, Poseidon was given the trident, and Hades was given the helm of invisibility. So they all fought together and they slayed their father. And Hades, right at the end, he snuck up with his helmet of invisibility. He took it right off his head, and then he looked his dad right in the eye and killed him. So it was like a major betrayal, because then he's like, oh, it's my son killing me. And he was very shocked, and that was what made him be able to kind of give that final blow. So after they slayed their father, the brothers divided the realms. And sometimes common misconception is that people think Zeus took the earth, but actually no one took the earth. They all share the earth. But Zeus took the sky, Poseidon took the sea, and Hades took the void, or the underworld. So that's kind of the origin story right there. So let me check the comments again. Yes, he is Zeus and Poseidon's brother. And M says she doesn't know much other than what I learned from the Persephone live. That's awesome. And the animated Hercules. Yeah, the animated Hercules, I do love that. But I feel it depicts him very differently than the myths. But I love that you know about him from my last live, because I feel like these kind of build off of each other. So yeah, put him in this order for a reason. And Billy Joe says that she doesn't feel one way or the other, to be honest. A very long time ago it was negative, but it's been good for just as long. Awesome. That's a great perspective. Okay, so that is kind of the origin myth. And then we also have the myth of Persephone's abduction. So we talked about that a lot in her live. But essentially, from Hades' point of view, he asked her father, Zeus, also his brother, kind of weird, he's her uncle, but to be fair, Persephone's parents were brother and sister, so I guess we're moving in the right direction here. Yeah, just a lot going on with those early Olympians. And Zeus asked her dad if he could marry her, and he said yes. And so he took her down to the underworld to be his queen. So there's a lot of different takes on this, and this is something that you really want to develop your own relationship and understanding with that myth and story, and what it means. I mean, ultimately, um, the magic of the myth, in my opinion, is how you determine how you work with them and how you sit with the knowledge of what happens. All of the characters are flawed, and this is certainly a flaw. He did not give Persephone consent in this, no matter what way you want to spin it. And she got taken from the field and then brought to the underworld. So that's kind of not the most consensual path. But no matter what you think about that, when you look at what happens in the future, the outcome is actually painted clear as day, no matter how you want to look at the past. And so Persephone does become a sovereign queen, and she is completely his equal. Hades remains steadfast and faithful, and these things were actually not seen with the other Greek deities. So whether he redeemed himself or he started off that way, I mean, that's up to you to determine what you want to think about, but just in terms of the outcome of the myth, it's very clear in the stories. So other myths that Hades is involved in are the ones with Orpheus and Eurydice. And that's a story where Hades chooses to help a mortal man connect with his lover who passed. He traveled down into the underworld to be able to save her. And Hades gave Orpheus a task of being able to take her forward and not looking back. And unfortunately, he looks back, and Hades keeps to his word and says, no, she's going back to the underworld. So that's kind of the story there. There are also other myths that mention Hades' previous lovers. So there's Minthe and Luce. And both of those relationships were with nymphs. The one with Minthe is a little bit hairy in terms of, like, was it before Persephone or did she come back? Like, how did that line up? Luce was definitely before. But either way, those relationships were fully ended, and whether Minthe came back or not, Persephone, whether Hades wanted to or not, Persephone turned her into a mint plant. So nothing actually happened. Whether he wanted to or not, again, it's up to you on how you want to work with the myths. But one thing I think is really cool about the previous lovers of Hades is that he never became spiteful or vengeful. So he actually doesn't ever really push wrath on anyone. He's pretty level-headed most of the time. And with those past lovers, he is able to honor their memories and continue on once those relationships have ended, and just really kind of honor them as that relationship ended, which I think is a really beautiful and a very mature thing to do. The scent of the mint is one of the most fragrant herbs out there, and it's used a lot in funeral rites. And so kind of that, like, memory of the scent of mint is really important in terms of that relationship ending. And then with Luce, she's turned into forgetting the name of the tree, but it's like a white-leafed tree, and he planted that in the underworld, or maybe turned her into that to allow her memory to continue. And have, like, a bright spot within the underworld. He is also aligned to myths of Heracles. He had a few different encounters with him. He played a role in Helen of Troy when they were trying to abduct Persephone within that. And kind of all the stories with the underworld link to Hades to some way. But most of the stories, like, they really don't have a whole lot to do with him. It's just kind of that he's there, he's ruling the underworld, and they don't give you a whole lot into who Hades is. So in terms of temples, the ancient Greeks, they really were not super into worshiping Hades. And the big reasoning for that, from what I've studied, is that they were afraid of him, but they weren't, like, afraid of him like the devil. They were afraid of him as they don't want to die right now. They're living the present. They don't want to die. And seeing Hades or seeing, anything connected to death would really essentially mean, it's time to die. So there wasn't a lot of worship. They didn't want to have that in their home. They didn't have the home altars really for Hades, just because most people are not really wanting to die. So that was kind of the main reason from what I've seen. There is one known temple in the ancient world, and it is located in the city of Elis, and that's Elis, and that's actually known for where the Olympic trials took place. And they're also known for their horse breeding, which I thought was fascinating because I love horses. And it's pretty interesting when you look at the word Elis. So Elis, E-L-I-S, in Hebrew, it means God is an oath. So I think that is actually very significant when working with Hades, because he is quite the man of his words. Like if he says something, it's very literal, and he never really takes it back. I would say like pretty much anything that he says is an oath. He does follow through with, I think, every single thing he says in every myth from what I have seen. So, with that being an oath, I think that's very significant. The Welsh also have the name Elis when I looked that up, as I thought that was interesting. And it means kind and benevolent, which I also find very fascinating because I think there's a lot of misconception about Hades. There's also I'm going to mispronounce this, but it's Necromantion of Archeron, and that is where they had necromancy rites. And Hades did play a really big role in this, and there was also the Oracle of the Dead in Thresrotia. I can't pronounce this. Thesprotia. Thesprotia, I think, something like that. And again, Hades plays a role in a lot of necromancy rites and a lot of oracles, especially when working with the dead. But those are not really truly temples for him. He's just kind of summoned or worked within that aspect. So the only really known temple is that one in Elis, and it is relatively small compared to some of the others. So one thing that's really interesting is that Hades is not considered an Olympian, and he really is. He was born at the same time as all the Olympians. He took one of the three realms, just like his brothers, but he just never is really added onto the list of Olympians. He does actually have equal rulership of Olympia and Earth, just like the others. Those were not divided up. They all have equal say. But he's just, never really mentioned as an Olympian. Some places will, especially more modern texts, but a lot of the kind of, more older stuff, like they just really don't have Hades out there. He doesn't take part in conflicts of mortals. He wasn't really in the Trojan War. I know I mentioned the Helen of Troy, but that was really, he's just kind of trying to back Persephone more than anything. And he also doesn't patron any heroes. So even when he was working with Heracles, he didn't patron him. He does have the land, the fields in the underworld for the heroes, but they're not ones that he's patronizing and really trying to make, do his biddings, right? So he's very much kind of an outcast of the rest of the deities. But despite all of that, his role is extremely important. So he's the ruler of the underworld, and that is the only place really that every soul is going to pass through. None of us get out of here alive. We all die, and we're all headed here, and we all kind of wonder, what is next after death? This is something that every human experiences. And that's always been something I'm very curious about as to why he's always left out, because not everyone encounters all the other aspects of the god and goddesses, but everyone surely encounters death. So I think that is really curious. All right, let me check comments. All right. Yes, he definitely has follow through for sure in the oath. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about my experience. So like I chatted a little bit about this, but I started working with Hades, of course, through working with Persephone. And it took, years before I started like really working with him. I don't have a full dedicated altar to him. I work with him primarily through my Persephone altar. I do a lot of my workings with the two of them, although I have started doing some just with Hades. Um, I I don't really ask him to do much for me. I just kind of have, if I have people that have passed or working with the underworld, I do work with him for that, but I don't really ask him to like help me out with stuff in my life a whole lot. Um, I have a bit with money, but other than that, not a whole lot. So I actually read, sorry, some water. I read a quote from a book, and I think I have the quote later in the notes too, but it said, I had to give myself permission to love Hades. And that quote like really spoke to me, and I felt like it described exactly how I felt on wanting to work with him. With Persephone, I kind of did a little bit of the same thing, but she really had a very, very strong calling to me. Whereas I didn't feel a call from Hades. It was more like, okay, I'm working with his wife and now he's around, and like, what do I do with this? But I did really have to give myself permission to move there. My practice is mostly a lighter practice. That being said, I do actually have a very strong connection to other realms. I always have. I've had a pretty dark past in certain aspects of my life. So I, don't really feel uncomfortable in shadow work, but it's not something that I choose to do. I do have a really deep connection to the void. I think it is less strong than it was when I was younger, but it is still quite strong. I was also born in the middle of the night, and almost my entire chart is in the dark for my astrology sign, for my zodiac chart. But my name, Ellen, actually means light. And when I do work in the dark, my goal is really to always bring light. And so it felt like working with Hades was just not what I was trying to do. But little did I know, it actually kind of works out quite well, at least for me. So I don't want to go too much into my personal story, but I'm going to tell you about a really crazy experience. And I will just say that because I'm sure I will sound like a crazy person describing this. I love using Ouija boards, and 3 different times now when I have used a Ouija board, I've had this profound experience where time has literally stopped. And I don't really know how to describe it without sounding like a crazy person, but essentially it's like I go through all these different levels and layers into a place where literally everything stops. And it's like I cannot even move. It's very freaky. And this particular time, it was during Samhain, so we're coming up on a year. And I had this experience again, but it was like a much more intense level. And I will also say that I was using mushrooms, so that definitely enhanced things quite a bit. But this was such an intense experience with the Ouija board that time fully stopped, and I realized that I was in the underworld. Like I was fully in the underworld. I was looking at the Ouija board. I was looking down at my hands, and my hands were like bones. They were a complete skeleton. It was super freaky. And I had a horse that had died, and I actually had his ashes all over the Ouija board and just kind of all over. And they were turning into magic and floating up in the air, and I could just feel the grit all over me from the bones. And this is my horse named Night. I know I've shared I call it my unicorn dust of my horse Titan. I worked with that horse with a lot of other people, and so I felt like his energy was to help others, whereas Night was very much a personal horse of mine. So that is a horse that I just only work with for myself. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked, but that's just part of the story I want to explain, especially for those of you that have some of Titan's dust. So I had that, kind of all flying around. So that was like a major part because I did have this horse that I had for many, many years past, and was working with his ashes during this. And while I was in this underworld experience, one thing that like really transformed around me was I was using the Ouija board, but I was the one that was dead. And I realized, like, okay, I am in the underworld. It was out in the desert, so it's also very dead out there. Like, there's nothing living in the desert. It's sand, and there's a few cactuses and such, but it's dry, and it just feels dead out there. I think anybody who's spent time in the desert probably knows what I'm talking about. Um, and yeah, so I was trying to use the Ouija board, and I was trying to connect with people on the other side. And I was like in this really crazy feeling because it's like, I don't know who's on the other side of this stupid Ouija board. It's almost like when you're using it and you're like, who's the spirit? But it was me. I'm down here in the underworld, and I'm like, okay, can some kid just pick this thing up? Like, I'm trying to get a message out here to the world. And I had, I won't share all these things because they're more personal to me, but I had like these messages that I really wanted to share with the world of like, this is what I'm learning right now, and I need to get that out. Thankfully, I was smart enough to write it down at some point because I realized that the kids I was trying to talk to, like junior high kids, that was who I envisioned like in the earth of like, hey, pick up this Ouija board because you need to get this message out to the earth. They were like goofing off on the Ouija board and like wouldn't actually listen to me. So it was pretty interesting to have that perception switch. And the times that I had it before, I didn't have the ability to move the Ouija board like I did this time. So that was really cool. And I just had, of course, all these things I'm thinking of with the underworld. I was thinking about Hades. I was thinking about Persephone. I was thinking about the death of my horse. My mom was diagnosed with cancer the year before, and she's thankfully much better. But that was, really present in my life at the time. A friend that I was with out there was also dealing with an attempted suicide from someone that she knew. That was like really major. So there was a lot of themes of death, let me tell you. And it was very, very powerful, that experience. So the next day, the mushrooms are fully worn off, and we were walking around. We kind of, went to town. We did different stuff. And we went to this really magical spot that's out in the desert. It's called Integratron. And it is said to have been built by aliens that are out there. And this entire dome building, it's built by humans, but like the plans for it were said to be downloaded from aliens. And so this entire dome building is built without like any nails. It's very strange. And I highly recommend that you go if you can, or at least look it up. And we went to the grounds. We were like walking around the visitor center, and this person came up to me, this man, and he was like, oh, I think have we met before? Or do I know you? And he was like an older guy, and he wasn't creepy, even though he might have been kind of hitting on me, but he wasn't creepy at all. And I was like, no, I don't think so. And I had this crazy feeling that I was talking to Hades. And I just was like, okay, I need to go take a nap or something, right? I feel like I'm a pretty reasonable person, but that was exactly what came to mind. And so then I'm talking to him. I'm like walking around the gift shop, and he just kept like talking to me and kept saying things and asking questions and confirming things that I was thinking about the day before, and was like talking to my friends about the day before. And it was extremely freaky because this man would not have known any of these things. Like, just, he wouldn't have. There's no way. And I was chatting with him, and it turns out that he, like, when he was younger, he used to live like very close to where I currently live, and like knew a lot of the same restaurants and things that we go to. So yeah, there's a lot of like really weird kind of synchronicities like that. Um, and also the mushrooms were like fully worn off at this point, like for many, many hours. So that's not a factor in this. But it was very freaky. And I actually like even asked him, I was like, oh, do you ever think of it like being kind of like the underworld down here? And he like fully confirmed that for me. And it was very, very freaky. Um, yeah, I know you're probably all thinking I'm nuts, but this is the story that I have with Hades when I met him in real life. And that's exactly what it feels like for me. And at that point, like, since that time, I definitely have looked at the world a completely different way. And yeah, I kind of question if, like, we're in the underworld or not still to this point. And that is my encounter that I had with Hades. All right, let me check the chats. Okay. Yeah, it was quite an experience, a lot of energy. It was very awesome. It wasn't actually scary. Like, it was freaky because I'm like, how is this real life? But there was nothing really scary about any of this, except for the kids not answering my Ouija board call. I was a little upset by that, but it was quite an experience. And yeah, it's interesting. I think that I probably was, and I do think that I met him for sure. So it was a very interesting time for sure. All right, so let's get more back into the information. So I think that etymology is really important. I think that words and meanings and things definitely change over time. And the earliest documented version of the name Hades, or I believe it was actually pronounced like, it's more pronounced like Hades, is Addis, Aides. And that's actually how Hades was more documented. And then it's evolved into the more familiar form. So Addis to Hades, and then Hades, I guess is how we would say it now. And the name actually originally means the unseen or the invisible one. And I actually love that, this group is the unseen witches. And yeah, we've got Hades as the unseen. And of course, that aligns to, no one can see the underworld, no one can see where any of this is. He has the invisibility helm. So all of that definitely ties in. And this is kind of one of those rare cases where the original folk etymology is pretty much the same as it ever has been, which I think is great. So Hades is really about bringing order to chaos. I think that's kind of the main gist of this guy throughout all of his work that he does. So there's very clear lines that prevent the souls from the dead to enter the souls of the living and vice versa. If we just had all the souls walking around where we could see them all, and the people walking around, it would be extremely chaotic. I don't think that ghosts are super into like, needing to farm and eat and go to work and all that kind of stuff. So it would just be chaos because we need a lot of order in our lives here on Earth. So we can eat and pay our bills and all the things, right? And one thing that I believe is that magicians, witches, whatever you want to call yourself, we have some of this ability to access these different realms and just kind of be able to go back and forth between these different things. And so, we look at like Hecate, right? She's the deity of witches, and Hermes working with magicians. I mean, these are deities that are able to pass between the realms very easily. These are the kind of their main things. And so I think that as a spiritualist, witch, magician, etc., we all have some of this ability to cross over. And I think as we become more skilled, we do get more ability, but I also think that like children and people closer to the time of death, like just kind of naturally pick that stuff up anyway. But yes, I do think as we're developing our skill, we easily can kind of cross into some of these realms, or have the ability to, connect with spirits and such. And so we kind of touch a little bit, into that chaos out of the order. But going back to Hades, that's really Hades' job, is being able to bring that order into chaos. And so I think it is quite natural for a lot of us witches to be able to work with the underworld, or at least work with other deities or whatever, pantheon or groups or whatever you like, working with the underworld or the other world or whatnot. But being able to have this ability to cross over, I think a lot of us, and I definitely see it in this group, a lot of us work with deities who, specialize in that. Okay, where am I in my notes? Okay, so we cannot, but no matter what, even though we have some of this ability to kind of cross over, we cannot fully enter these spaces. Like, I cannot get up and just like walk into the underworld and then walk back up. Like, that just is not happening for me, and I don't think anybody is able to do that. And even when I'm having my experience out in the desert, and I, think I'm in the underworld, there was no like true crossing over, right? Like, even I was stuck in that form at the time. So, it just kind of is what it is. I can't like freely cross back and forth, and I don't know anyone that can. And so he's really in charge of keeping these distinctions within this order. And when he builds that structure, he's very fair-minded. He treats, really, honestly, he treats everyone equally after death, even though there's sort of these different areas, like in terms of how he interacts with them, he doesn't do any of the, punishment or judgment or anything along those lines. He's just kind of ruling it. He just makes sure everything is moving along, everything is orderly, and in all accounts that are recorded, he's not the one who's making the judgment. Those are going to be other deities, and sometimes even Persephone is the one making the judgments. But Hades actually doesn't. And then he also doesn't do the punishing. I believe that is the Fates, or the Furies. Hold on. I'm getting to that in my notes. Jumping ahead. Okay. So he's basically the ruler of the underworld to ensure that all is balanced and running smoothly. So some common misconceptions. Hades is not the god of death. So sometimes people think like, oh no, Hades is going to appear, or on the death tarot card, you've got Hades. No, that's Thanatos. So Thanatos is the god of death. He's the one that comes as the Grim Reaper. Hades is down in the underworld. He doesn't bother to come up and get you. He also doesn't do the judgment or the punishment. There is actually a judgment panel. It's kind of like, it's like the Supreme Court, I guess, for an American term. You've got everybody sitting around and they decide. And then the Furies are the ones that punish you, and also the guardians of the Tartarus. He does turn a lot to Persephone to make judgments in like really weird cases. So even with like Orpheus and Eurydice, like Persephone was really the one to say like, hey, I want to do this. And he's like, okay. Let's see. He also has no say when it comes to the length of your lifetime, what time you're going to die, any of that stuff. So he actually really doesn't have anything to do with that. That is all about the fates. So those are some common misconceptions. Okay, so the Greeks portrayed Hades as honestly pretty passive. He's a pretty passive guy. He didn't really take a really active stance on things going on with the mortals. And he definitely wasn't really evil to them. He's just like, okay, he's the guy of death. That's where I'm going to have to go when I die. It's pretty much Christianity. They sort of invented all this, like the notions of Hades being mixed with this Christian figure of the devil. And it's actually a modern Christianity thing. It's not even in antiquity. So in Hebrew, which is what the Bible was written in the Old Testament, it talks about the realm of the dead called Sheol. It's Sheol. And I'll spell it again in case you want to look it up. Sheol. And that translates to a dark, still place where souls departed, or departed souls reside. So I'll say that again. It translates to a dark and still place where departed souls reside. So that doesn't sound at all like some flamey, fiery hell. So where did that come from? It is said that it came from Dante's Inferno, and a lot of dogma through the ages to scare people. And then, of course, there's tons of other depictions through the ages and all these different things. We've got the Disney movie, all that keeps coming and adding to this like fiery hell kind of thing. And I don't know a ton about Christianity, to be honest. I wasn't really deep into it. But from what I'm aware of, I don't even believe hell is in the Bible. So, maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that that is like a modern thing as well. So this kind of whole notion of all of this like isn't in there. And the idea of the underworld is, which is kind of interesting, because then it has that in the Hebrew Old Testament, basically described the same way as the Greeks had it described. All right, so Hades is essentially a host. He has all these names, and one of them is like the host of many or host of all. And this is my example, but I think of him a little bit like a restaurant manager. And this isn't to downplay him, but I think it's kind of a great analogy to think about his role. We all go to restaurants. We all know a little bit how they work at least. But he's kind of the host of many. He's making sure that everything runs really smoothly at the restaurant. All the souls enter the underworld until they're ready to be reborn. So while they're there hanging out at the underworld, hanging out in the restaurant, he's going to make sure that, everyone is getting the hospitality that they need. Because the Greeks actually believed that hospitality was a sacred right. That is super important in Greek mythology and Greek lifestyle. So it was the sacred duty of the host, which is Hades at the underworld, right? He's the host, so he's making sure that all of the guests receive hospitality. Now, that is not to be said that everybody who did wrong on the earth now gets to come in and just chill at this restaurant, because they do have different levels. So they've got like the VIP section for those that were just really amazing and did all the stuff and were heroes, etc. They get to be in the VIP section, and those who were, not good, they have to go to the tables in the basement or something. So they don't get to have the same privileges. But the vast majority of people are all kind of in the main area. And in Greek mythology, those souls are often called shades. So they're the shades in the underworld. So I hope you like my analogy. All right. So Hades also really loves gardens, and I think that is really cool. And this was really built on a lot with the myths of Persephone, and kind of building more with Persephone as she's the maiden of spring. And being able to bring a lot of her floral energy and things like that into the underworld. But he actually had quite a bit of botany and plants and stuff going on well before her. Their home is the halls of Hades, and outside of that is actually an orchard. They have all kinds of sacred plants there, the pomegranate trees, bay laurel, the poplar tree. That is the one that Luce became. Let's see, other sacred plants are going to be datura, dittany of Crete, rue, mistletoe, bay laurel, hellebore, fig, and thyme. I'm sure there's others, but these are the ones that I've just got on my list. Water is also very sacred. So there's quite a few rivers in the underworld. And there are also like pools of water everywhere. And water is the element that takes you to and from the underworld. So we see this a lot with various mysteries and such. Of course, we have the ferryman that takes you down, the water kind of falling through caverns in the earth, like going down into the underworld. We see this, kind of with waterfalls falling in, even in, sort of more the like, English style. Even I think of like Lord of the Rings for some reason is popping in my mind. So you have like the caves with the dwarves, and there's all this water that falls in. Um, yeah, I mean, there's just the water is the element that does that, and that's also the on the High Priestess card. We have the water behind her as well. Check comments. Okay, so we've got Erica says her dad had a hellhound when he was growing up. He got into an accident that honestly should have killed him and at least amputated something, but Onyx didn't and couldn't smell anyone with bad intentions and was beyond protective. I love that. And that definitely sounds a lot like, Hades' hounds, the three-headed dog Cerebus. Actually have this little crystal right here. I don't know if you can see this. Where's my camera? There we go. Got that there. That is really cool. And I love the name Onyx. That's perfect. And Danielle says that she sounds crazy, but she can see into other realms and has had a recent strange experience where you were awake in the middle of the night. That is cool, and I would love to hear more about it. And very cool that you can see into other realms. Billy Joe says, make sure you always come back to us. Thank you. Yes, I have no intention of not. And yes, I'll catch you later. Thanks for stopping in. And Erica says the Greeks absolutely believe in hospitality here on earth above ground. Absolutely. Yes, it is so critical, like integral into their culture from antiquity into today. And Danielle says he didn't know he liked gardens. I didn't know he liked gardens either. When I first heard about him, I thought he was, living in fiery pits of hell. So, yeah, it took a long time to learn all these things. But when you see all this stuff, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that is there. It's pretty interesting. All right. So science, he's calling for you. So I actually don't think that he really calls on anybody. I mean, there might be some exceptions, but I just don't think he cares, to be honest. I don't think he cares that much. He doesn't really go in and meddle with humans. There's nothing that I can offer to him. Like, I'm fully aware of that. I can't even really think of any human that has anything that can offer him something. He doesn't meddle with the lives of humans. He's not trying to get some lady. Like, he's not trying to get worshipers. Like, he's just not trying to do that like maybe some of the other deities are. Where they would be like, yeah, help me so that I can get what I want and all this kind of stuff. Like, he's just really not doing that. So maybe there's something, I'm sure there's some instance somewhere, but not me. Like, I don't know. There's really nothing that I can think of that would be that exciting that I could do for him. I do think that he will help me with some things, but I kind of feel like it's a little bit more connected with the work I'm doing with Persephone. And I say that like not to have you not work with him or anything, but just kind of keep that humbleness in mind. I mean, he's the god of the underworld. Like, I'm gonna go there anyway at some point. He already has, rulership over Earth like everyone else. So yeah, I mean, I think just kind of think about that if you want to work with him. Like, you don't really have any leverage, but some signs maybe that, show up are going to be just kind of common symbols of the underworld. Maybe there's souls there that want to connect with you. Maybe they're trying to get their Ouija boards to talk to somebody or whatever, and you can help. I could see that, the necromancy aspects he does want to work with. Some other things could be screech owls, black dogs, keys, Hecate is also very associated with keys, but Hades is the one that holds the key to the underworld. Like that is his sole job. So I know I sometimes hear that with Hecate, but you know she can pass back and forth. She plays a major role. She's a beautiful, amazing goddess, but that is for sure, in my opinion, a misconception because that is Hades' job is to like hold the balance to the underworld. So he's got the true key. Um, let's see. We've also got the Six of Swords in tarot, so that could be a really good synchronicity. So the Charon, the ferryman, is depicted on the Six of Swords, and so you know that's journeying in and out of the underworld. So I think that's a really cool card to, you know, if you're getting that a lot, that could be a really good sign to work with Hades. Some of his powers include invisibility, of course, necromancy, wealth. He does rule all of the riches, so you can't even give him money because he's ruling it all. Self-control, like he just really has a lot of that. He has the ability to turn things dark. He can just make it nighttime wherever he goes. He can control souls. He can kind of control your mind as well. Although I don't think that's like his main power, but that does kind of come up sometimes. He gets to decide whoever leaves or enters the underworlds, like he's the final say. He controls the dead, and he controls everything in his dominion. So he's got a lot of power. Some of his symbols are the helmet, the bident. I don't think we talked about that, but the bident is like a two-pronged staff. So I guess it kind of looks like if my arm is the pole, then you've got like the two, as a horrible depiction, but it's like a two-pronged thing with a line. And that is, you know, his weapon controls the dead. Skulls are, of course, skulls and skeletons are huge symbols, like all the plants that we talked about. The dog, especially the three-headed dog, everything underworldy. The pomegranate is really more associated with Persephone, but it is also associated with him. Horses, the owl, the sign of Scorpio is very connected to him. So perhaps even if you are a Scorpio, that could be a sign. My midhaven is in Scorpio, so that kind of like rules my whole sign with everything underground. So that really checked out for me, even though I don't have too many signs in Scorpio. And of course, Pluto. Pluto is Hades as well. That's in you know, the Latin Roman side. That's supposed to be Hades. So if you didn't know that, Pluto and Hades, the mythology and the planet and all that are the same, and the associations are the same too. So in astrology, Pluto is all about transformation. It's about power, death, sex, rebirth, like all the things, right? So that's an easy way to also remember what Pluto is about, is just think of Hades. So with going back to Scorpio, Scorpio is a fixed water sign, and that is another massive hint within the mysteries, right? The water transforming, taking you to the underworld and back, and that's the fixed water sign, the truest expression of water in the zodiac. He does have a symbol, so actually in this book, I have that. It is on page 29. Let's see if I can get this up. So that is his symbol. If you want to write that down, I'll leave it for a second. That is a symbol of Pluto and Hades. Okay, you can use it like a sigil, like anything you would want to use. With Hades, that is the sign, the symbol to use. So what will you learn or gain from working with Hades? Actually, let me check my comments again. Yeah, Persephone did have to entice him at some point. And yeah, I mean, all the flowers and all that, it's kind of all there, like all the signs. And she has a lot of duality. Those are things he's really into, and we'll get into that a little bit too. Danielle's moon is in Scorpio. That's very cool. That's a very cool moon sign to have. Yes, very cool. And the tarot card, the moon is ruled by a Scorpio, not the moon. That's another misconception. All right. So what are you going to learn from working with Hades? So one of the first things is that Hades cannot be bargained with. I think the Orpheus myth is the perfect example of that. I mean, really kind of all of them, but that one is the one that really stands out to me, is if he tells you to do something and you reached an agreement, like if you do not follow through, like it's just gonna suck. It's going to suck for you, all that you did. Like this poor guy went all the way to hell, or down to Hades. Like he went all the way there and convinced everyone that his love was the most beautiful thing, played this beautiful song, had everyone in the underworld crying, and then he takes Eurydice up to Earth, and the last step he messed up. He messed up that bargain. He looked back, and within an instant, she's gone. I mean, and poor Eurydice, right? Like, that sucks to be her. Don't mess up. Like, if you're going to work any type of deal with him, or you're going to try to, if you just say you're going to do something, like, you better do it. Like, don't even think about trying to say anything otherwise. Like, if you are asking Hades for help and you are wanting, even if you just are, like, one way that I actually really like to work with him is I state something that I'm going to do, and that is enough motivation for me to get it done. Because yeah, like once I say it out loud and I say it to Hades, like I better do it. So that's actually one of the ways that I like to work with him, to really have that motivation. Just to know that, hey, if I say I'm going to do something, like now I have to do it because Hades knows. And yeah, he needs me to do what I say. So I think that's a great way to work with him. Very practical and easy way to work with him. But whatever small or big thing that you want to do, you just want to make sure you do it word for word, and that, you know, if he does give you some type of message of like, this is what you need to do, just do it. Do it exactly as he says to do it. Kind of like the Fae with that, but I don't think he's really a trickster. Okay, so common themes with Hades. Victory. He did overthrow his father. He did get the bride that he wanted. I mean, he really just kind of always gets what he wants. He's, yeah, he has no problem really getting victory. Invisibility is another really common theme with him, the unseen. Sorry, my voice is struggling. Prophecy is really big, like having the foresight of like what is to come, what's going to happen. You know, oracle work, divination, and of course, you know, necromancy as well. That's not an area that I work in, but that is for sure a great way to work with Hades. Oh, and then here's the quote. This came out of this book, and I'll show the books again at the end. But this is a book called Hades, Myth, Magic, and Modern Devotion. And it is by Jamie Wagoner. Wagoner? Yeah, Wagoner. It's a great book. I highly, highly recommend this book if you want to work with him. But this is a quote right out of here, which I just thought was really good and I wanted to share. So I had to give myself permission to love Hades. Hades is always described through the lens of someone else's experience. He is always casted in a supporting role in the stories, but he's never starring on his own. And this makes it hard to get to know him on a first-hand perspective. And I really thought this was a powerful quote because it really sums up what it is like to work with him. Everything that you hear about Hades, you hear about it from someone else. And there's never a first-hand experience. He doesn't really put like his story out there. He doesn't put like he doesn't really, I don't even think he's quoted like in any of these things. Like he's not really meddling with any of the lives of anybody. And it's really just kind of hard to tell, what it is that he may or may not want. So, you just really kind of have to work with him the way that he shows up for you specifically. So I think that's really cool. Great quote, and really does sum up, a lot of what it's like working with Hades. Um, okay, so wealth is commonly associated with Hades, and I think this is one of the reasons a lot of people decide to work with Hades, because who does not want to be rich? But Hades, his domain includes all of the riches beneath the surface of the earth. So that's gold, of course, diamonds, all the things. Rocks, metals, gems, minerals, fertile soil, like all the things that make the, the world go round, all the wealth. I mean, he controls it. So if you are wanting wealth, if you want money, I mean, these are great things to work with Hades. Again, why does he want to give it to you? Like he controls it. Why does he want to work with you? That's kind of my personal take. I am certainly not rich. I would love to be, but you know, um, will he help for something you might need to do something? I don't know. Maybe time will tell. Maybe, I don't know. I can't answer that question. But from my personal experience, I don't think he's going to just give me money because I ask. So I think you have to figure out how you want to work with him on that. But I do know that a lot of people are very drawn to working with Hades because they want that. Does it work for them? I haven't seen it. But, that's just kind of what I hear. The word on the street is work with Hades if you want to be rich. Also, if you're really into crystals, you might be being led to Hades to some way. Rocks and minerals and metals and gems, those are all in that same domain. So he actually does rule over all crystals as well. Necromancy is very linked with Hades. So he's, worked with really probably all of the oracles to some degree. Necromancy, he's called on, a lot in a lot of these practices. He does kind of have an affinity with soul drawers. And those are people who evoke uneasy ghosts to help coax them into rest. So that could maybe actually be a way that maybe he would want to work with you, because you're kind of helping him keep the order. If you're like, hey, this ghost is trying to cross or do something, they need to get in line, then maybe you're helping them release that and get in line. I could see that as maybe he would call on you to do that. But he's also got like a whole bunch of deities that can do this stuff too. So necromancy was actually very widespread in Greece, despite a sinister reputation. So it was very like, no, we can't do that, but then everyone's doing it. There's also, I think we talked about this a little bit, but the famous temple, the Necromantion of Ephyra. And that was kind of devoted mostly to Hades and Persephone. It wasn't exactly a temple. It was a temple, but it was more about necromancy versus really Hades. Okay, so other things you can learn or gain from working with Hades is, you're probably going to be likely to work with Persephone. So if you start working with Hades, you're probably going to end up working with Persephone as well, just like I went the other way. So if you go this way, you're probably going to work with her, at least to some degree. This doesn't apply too much to this group, but reframing masculinity is another big one that Hades can help with. And if you're a female or looking at masculinity in your life somehow, maybe he can show you what like an equal partner looks like, someone who is able to empower you and helps you keep your own power at the same time. There's a lot to like about Persephone and Hades' relationship, as they are ruling, especially together. My favorite thing that you will learn about working with Hades is learning to look between the lines, really understanding the depths to the truth. And this is the part that really I connect to with working with Hades. So in order to see the unseen one, we must learn to look between the lines. I don't know where I got that quote from, but I found it somewhere when I was doing some research on this. And again, I think that is another very powerful quote. I'll read it again. In order to see the unseen one, we must learn to look between the lines. And really what this means is you're going to need to work with the understanding of the mysteries within life and death. And the way that you do this is by looking at patterns, is really looking at the different patterns in the way of the world. You'll need to learn to look for clues that are hidden in context. And you truly must become a master of decoding things and reading between the lines. That is the only way you could even get to this story. Understanding paradox is critical. That is a true critical thing of working with Hades. Seeing things not only as they are on the surface, but as they are hidden from you. And that's how you get to these hidden realms. And it's not about diving into conspiracy theories, okay? This is learning how to uncover things for yourself and to see things in a different light. It's truly about learning to see in the dark and learning how to navigate in the dark. That's super, super important for working with Hades. If you want to be able to get to the underworld some way, besides just, flat dying, right? But if you want to be able to have these moments where you can see into the underworld, or these moments that you can connect and have this, mystical ability to get back and forth somehow as some of these, deities that can come through, you have to be able to see in the dark and navigate the dark. And I fully believe it's learning through paradox and clues. And you can do this by exploring the fragments of reality. So the little bits of context that survive within the narratives. And you can do this right in the myths. Those little bits of fragments that, survive when especially when they've been tried to have been omitted in the story. And you start to see that where it's like, okay, this was changed. Why was this changed? So my quest that I would give you is start with this myth. Like, start with the myths of Hades if this is something that you want to do. And then let him and the other underworld beings, whether those are mystical beings or your ancestors or any other, being in the underworld that you're attracted to, like, let them lead you to the rest and let your intuition guide you. But you can start with Hades myth because it is filled with paradox and it is filled with a whole lot of these things. So let's talk about some of these things that you can look for. So in these mythological tales, you can look at the plants. There's so many plants in all of these. Places, animals, the etymology of words. Each of these things has a whole rabbit hole you can go down on learning additional meanings. And as you start training yourself to look for these things and learning how to research these things, you will start to see things more as they are. So when you know, like, okay, this plant means this animal means this, then when you see that stuff come up in the stories, you'll see it a little bit differently, and you'll start to see these clues that unfold into bigger things. And I also encourage you to, like, keep learning, right? And then read it again once you know more, because you'll see it a bit differently. And this, if you're not interested in the Hades myth, like, I invite you to take that quest into a different story, especially ones that have, like, the life, and death type of story to it, right? Those elements, that's really going to be kind of where you can pick up the most within these stories. So definitely use the ones that speak to you. But if Hades is speaking to you, or if you even have an interest, I would encourage you to look into that right away, or when you can. Okay, where did I go in my notes? Okay, so another thing is the ancient world was considered to be what's called numinous. And that word is Numinous. And that means that it was infused with divine power. Um, so the ancient world, like all these people walking around, hearing these stories, like living this life, um, hearing these myths, and they actually didn't need to look for magic. That's something that we do a lot now, is like we're looking for the magic. We're like, where is it? Because back then they actually believed everything was magic. It wasn't like, is this magic or is that? Like, where is it? It was everything. Magic was everywhere. And I mean, they would, have all these stories of like a god just shows up as an animal. So it's like, hey, this cow is walking down the road. Like, is that a god or is that a cow? And so they think about this stuff all the time. I mean, that is a little bit like my experience too. I'm like, is this just a man walking around or is this Hades? Like, did he just come in as this, or is he like, some other kind of messenger or something, right? Um, and not to question your reality. We don't want you to be really questioning reality, but looking at reality as like, this could be magic. Like, what is this? That was a time in my life where there was a whole lot happening. It wasn't just my regular day to day, right? And so looking for the magic in your like looking at magic in your day to day life, that's where you can find the clues that are hidden in plain sight. And those magical instructions are truly hidden in plain sight. And the more that you really understand these things, the more you will start to see it everywhere. It really is everywhere. And that is a big part going back to Hades, because Hades is invisible and everywhere at the same time. Do we even know that the underworld is underground? Is it in the sky? Is it in a whole nother timeline? Is it on top? I mean, I don't have the answers to any of these things, right? But the mysteries are hidden in plain sight. And these types of things you'll find clues to what you need, and let your intuition guide you to those clues as well. But that invisibility while being there at the same time is part of that paradox. Okay. So as you work with Hades and as you explore into kind of more paradoxical thinking, you will really learn to see things as they are and understand things that are vastly different from maybe how you originally perceived them. And I do have a couple of questions, and I'd love for you to put your answers to these in the chat. They're just kind of, questions to think about. And one of them is, can we even understand another perspective unless someone shares it? So the question is, can we understand someone else's perspective unless they speak it out loud or show us? And then another question I have is, can we even see our own faults unless someone points it out? So can we even see our own faults unless someone points it out? So these questions, there's no right or wrong answer, but they're there to help you really think about that paradoxical thinking kind of in your day to day, right? Like, how can you really understand what someone else thinks? Can you even understand the faults in yourself, right? I mean, and thinking about how the mirroring of that could be really important, and how the paradoxical thinking is important, and what's hidden from us, like what is hidden from our realities and our perceptions, until we're able to really see it a different way. And then how do we see it? So those are life questions, right? But those are things I think to think about. One thing I think is very notable about Hades is that he actually received that helm of invisibility before he was assigned to the underworld, because it seems like, oh wow, of course he got the helm of invisibility, he's going to go into the underworld. But he didn't know that at the time. He actually just got vomited up by his dad and had to fight. And the Cyclops is like, here, you're going to get this. And, it didn't really seem like the most powerful weapon. His brother got the lightning bolt. His other brother got this trident that were like, seriously cool weapons, right? And he just had this invisibility like helmet. It's like, well, what are you supposed to do with that? But he was the one that dealt the final blow. And another thought with that is, did the Cyclops have the foresight of knowing that Hades was going to the underworld? The Cyclops has one eye on his forehead, just like where a third eye would be. Is that a coincidence? I don't know. But having invisibility, so we'll kind of talk about that helmet a little bit more. Having invisibility is a really important in strategy, any strategy that you are doing in life. And I think this is kind of, something to think about with that helmet, is really thinking about that, integrating that. When you're having some type of strategy in life, you don't really want people to know your hand until you're ready to play it. Once you speak something out loud, the truth is now out there. And that's something that I think is important as we are doing magic and we speak out loud. We say our incantations, we say our spells, we're putting power into the words that we say. We're speaking it. And as we speak those things, we're really putting our intention, our magic behind it. But also think about what is being withheld if you don't speak it. There's power in that too. And it's like having the other side of the coin. You want to know how to use both. Like having that silence is really important as well. And it goes along with a lot of the work with Hades is what you keep hidden, others can't know what direction that you're going. You're not putting that intention behind it. It kind of allows you to sort of sit in the void when you have that silence. And if someone's forcing you to speak, I mean, that could be a manipulation as well. But so the other thing to think about is, the occult is named after being hidden. So there's a lot kind of connected here and going on here. A lot of covens are hidden, right? The members, it's very secret. Even the unseen, you cannot find this group unless you're in the owl group and you're an active member and you're able to come in and, you're keeping that alliance. Like a lot of these things are set up like this, right? No surprise. It's just kind of typical within a lot of these spiritual communities. Sometimes there's like the forward facing group and then one behind. I know that there's a group I work with where we have our public rituals and we have our private rituals that are not advertised. And so, that's how a lot of different spiritual groups work. And all of the synchronicity here within the Hades stories and working with Hades and working with Underworld just in general, there's a lot to unpack and a lot for you to work with and make it your own, make it what works for you. But I think there's a lot of guidance within this story too. And the other side to think about is, what is hidden is also subject to being very suspect. Why is it hidden? Things that are hidden often lack transparency and lack accountability. So that's another question for you is, how are you going to have what you need when you work with the underworld? Because you don't know what's in there. It's dark. There's something hiding in the shadows. Like, I don't know. I can't answer that for you. But, that's the other side of the hidden, is that, yes, you can kind of protect yourself. You can become the stealthy warrior. You can play knowing when to play your hand at the right time. Like, timing is kind of everything. Knowing when to speak your words, to speak the power into what you want to do. Take that physical action when you want to do. But then also, when you don't, well, people see that as, Do you have accountability? Do you have transparency or others that you're working with? So that there's a lot to think about here. And again, this isn't about opening conspiracies or being paranoid, but these are for kind of bigger things in your life, like really thinking about this, where you're feeling led to think about them. Okay, let me check comments. Been chatting for a while. Yes, very good way to keep yourself accountable. And Erica, you're saying who wouldn't want to be? I think that's probably about the riches. Yeah, it definitely makes life easier. I would love to win the lottery. Like if anyone wants to go in with me on that and gets the right numbers, like let's do it. And yes, all about following your intuition. Erica, I'm so glad that you are finding this interesting. I too did not give Hades thought for really many years, and I have truly enjoyed working with him. And another comment, Danielle says, I think you could understand another perspective without them saying something. And yes, you could see your own fault, but only if you choose to. That's a great answer. And Erica said, so I think one has to give themselves a hard and honest look and be open to how the other thinks. I agree. And thanks, I'm glad you like my mug. It's my Alice in Wonderland Cheshire cat mug here. It's like I'm going to be talking for a while on this one, so I want to get the biggest mug I have, which is this one. Okay, so offerings if you want to work with him. And we are coming up on the end, so I've got 2 more sections. I know this is a long one. So traditionally, if you want to have any type of offering to really any underworld deity, but especially Hades, you want to bury that offering. You are going to put it straight in the ground and bury it. So that being said, please honor nature, bury things that are biodegradable, non-toxic, like let's do all the right things, okay? You know, a traditional offering that is actually described in the Odyssey, so this is written down in the Odyssey, is that you will dig a hole in the ground to give an offering to Hades. And it should be what's called 1 cubit, that's C-U-B-I-T, wide and 1 cubit long. So the length of that, the cubit is the length of your forearm, so from your elbow to your wrist. That is a cubit, so it's a pretty big hole. And the hole itself is called a bothos, B-O-T-H-O-S, and that is actually a dedicated altar in the ground. So that is what it is. And once you have dug that hole, you're going to pour a libation into the hole. So it will be milk mixed with honey. So those will be pre-mixed, milk and honey. And then you will pour red wine and then water into this hole. And then you will sprinkle barley all over the hole. It is also then recommended to sacrifice an animal, and that should be a ram or a black ewe or a sheep, black sheep. So you will slaughter the animal at night and you will let the blood drip into the ground. So I personally do not recommend slaughtering animals unless you are actually going to honor that animal and eat it, you know. If you're going to use the animal for food and you care for it correctly and you know you give it this humane ending, personally I think that's okay, but I'm not doing it. I don't actually eat that much meat. I'm not going to go out there and sacrifice an animal, and I don't really recommend doing that. But I would say if you really wanted to do this for some reason and you know how to butcher an animal and you're going to eat it, like, great. Like, you probably cared for that. That animal probably had a much better life and death than most factory farms. So all the power to you. So some substitutes, if you don't feel like slaughtering an animal, is that you can use ram horns. Those you can find around. You know, animals die, they fall off. Hopefully you could find them ethically sourced, but ram horns could be a great one. Bones are great, especially if they're from like a sheep or a goat or a ram. Pig would probably also be fine. I'm sure we can find pork ribs. That'd be great. You could use those bones right there. And you can also use sheep wool, ideally black, because it ideally is a black sheep. But you can also paint things or dye them somehow. You could use charcoal, and that's easily could go in the ground. So those are all, kind of a way that you can do that traditional offering. I have not done that. It's just in the book, and I wanted to share, especially because it's such an ancient one. Okay. And so after you kill the animal, then you can say like some prayers and hymns that can be sung or spoken. And your hands will be lowered towards the ground as you're speaking this. You can stomp on the earth, dance, or pound on the ground somehow to call the attention of all the underworld gods. Sorry, my nose is really running. Try to stick it out. Okay. So as you're pounding on the ground, you're dancing, you're jumping around on the ground. That kind of lets the deities down in the underworld know, like, hey, something's going on up there. Like, let's go see what that's all about. And then they get their sacrifice. And as you're doing all of this, including like the slaughter and pretty much everything, like the pouring and all of that, it is said that you should have your back faced to the ritual, or that you're like looking away. So obviously if you're doing this on your own, you kind of can't do that. So you're gonna have to maybe sort of turn, like keep your head away, or maybe you are doing the thing and then you turn as you pour or something. So that way you can kind of honor that aspect of the tradition. Hades is supposed to be the unseen. The underworld is supposed to be unseen. And so this brings in that aspect. So the best time to do this would be, of course, at night. So you also would do this, ritual at night or in the twilight as well. Okay, so other like symbols and things of Hades. So these are great offerings that you could do in an altar or however you want. So this is different from the ritual I just said. But coins, of course, are like a major offering. So I actually have, or these are like symbols and things for working with him. So this is a coin that I was gifted in one of our exchanges. It's like I believe it's a remake of like one of the ancient Greek coins. So I use this, and I have other coins, especially found coins, when I've been doing something specifically, right? Like, or I'm thinking about an ancestor and I'm like, oh, there's a penny on the ground. Like that to me is very significant and a gift. And I normally pick those up and I do put them on my altar. So I have like a little pile of change on there, and not just like every coin I get, of course, but just the ones that I've found during really significant moments. And then I have this big coin. And you can also use a coin for divination. I mean, it's a very easy yes/no divination. Let's see what else we got. So keys are actually another great one. I didn't bring it, but I have a cluster of keys. His colors, I don't think I got into this, but his colors, of course, are black, dark purple, and like a darker red. Those are the main colors for him. Red wine is a great offering. Black tea, honey is another great one. Pomegranates, again, mostly connected to Persephone. All of those herbs that we talked about, cypress, mint, poplar, narcissus, the daffodil, that's the flowers that Persephone was picking at the time. When he grabbed her. And then what's another one? Like the datura is another really big one. Bones can be great as well. I don't think it's so much with animals personally. That's how I feel. But bones that represent like humans, I think is pretty good. Like if you have teeth, or you happen to have bones of humans, any kind of skull-shaped thing. And actually bones of the animals specifically that he works with, like if you have dog teeth, I know a lot of people have their puppy's teeth after they fall out, if you're lucky enough to find one. That could be a really great one. The owl, if you have owl bones, that could be great too. hair from a dog. Like I actually have hair from a dog that has passed. So I actually have that on my altar. So those are, some really nice things. Graveyard dirt, black gemstones, incense, candles, just kind of the typical stuff too. All right. So best times to do rituals with Hades. The spring and fall equinox are really great times because that's like the equal time of light and day, and he is really all about balance, and so it has that balance aspect. It's also, there's a lot of different myths on this, but this is the time that I work with it, is when Persephone comes in and out of the underworld. To me, it makes the most sense that it would line up with nature. But I think people say anywhere from like 3 to 9 months is maybe how long she stays in the underworld, depending on whatever thing you want, or however many pomegranate seeds. There's a lot of different beliefs on that. I personally work with the equinox. I feel things line up for a reason. So, what better way than the seasons? That's kind of how I see it. So those transitions, I think, are a really great time to work with the underworld. It's also when the veil is supposedly thinner, right, coming through. And that transitory time, I think, is a great time to work with the underworld, and also with the time of Persephone's coming in and out. It's a loss when she leaves for Hades, and it's a big win when she comes in for Hades. So, that definitely is a big part of who he is, and how he rules the underworld. Okay. Also, the winter solstice is really a great time to work with him. It's the longest night of the year with the most dark, so of course that makes a lot of sense to work with him. Every month, on the waning dark moon, that is a great time to work with him. And I don't remember why specifically the waning dark moon, but that's what I have, and that's how I do work with him. It might have been something that I adapted, so you might want to double check on that one, because that is when I was born, under a waning dark moon. So I may have just connected that more to my own personal practice, just FYI. But I didn't look it up, but that is what I have in my notes from a couple various places. Okay, and then also at twilight. So I think there's something about the transitory aspect here, because twilight, again, is not the darkest point. So it's something about, there is something that goes on. I just don't know what it is off the top of my head. But something with the transition between the day and the night, like going into the dark. Maybe that's kind of like significant of going into the underworld, just kind of trying to guess what I had for the reasoning behind that. And then, actually it says right here. So some accounts of the underworld are described as being just passing the setting sun. So I think, yeah, that transitory aspect is, it's important to my practice. So, that's what I've got in my notes. But I would say, if you feel more called to do like the true black moon, or like the darkest point in the night, like absolutely do that. Do what, makes the most sense for you. Okay. So some devotional acts, just kind of recognizing the twilight, recognizing the dark, working with the magic of that time of day, thinking about the dark, thinking about, being able to see without any light, or as the light is receding. So just kind of working with the light and dark around you, the time of day, the time of year. Some other things that you can do is drink a cup of mint tea. Mint is very sacred. It's a very popular tea. You can anoint your skin by drawing like a sigil on your body, or whatever you want to use, a candle or anything like that. You can make your own essential oil blends, or you can just use, I think I've read that truffle oil is a good one to use specifically for Hades. Because truffles do grow in the ground, so they're also very expensive. So that's like another maybe reason why it does align to the wealth. But that could be a cool way to work with him. If you don't want to use like a blend that you make, you can just pick up some truffle oil. Kind of an easy, well, maybe not easy, but You can organize your wallet. That's a kind of, meditative practice that you can do on the daily. Keeping your finances in good health. That's a, keeping that order and organization in your life, and honoring the wealth and the things that get you wealth and things, is a good way to work with him. Really working with any crystals or metals is a great way to do a devotional act to Hades, especially if you want to learn like some type of metal craft. I mean, if you wanted to learn ironworking, that'd be amazing to work with Hades. Yeah, really any metal smithing, something like that. Feeding a treat to a dog, caring for dogs. If you have pet dogs, like you're probably doing that every day. So that could become a devotional act. He really does love his dogs. You can connect with the dead. You can visit grave sites. You can care for the dead. You can clean up a gravestone. There's, a million things you can do with the dead. But just any way that you work with them can also be a devotional act to Hades. Cornucopia, I don't think we really covered this, but cornucopias are also connected to Hades. So, the seasons, the bounty of them, the wealth as well, the plants, all those things actually really ties in quite a bit. So doing a cornucopia display is another great way to honor him. And then all the generic stuff, altars, meditation, art, like all the things you do for any deity, you could do for Hades, as a devotional act. All right. So last but not least, I have 2 hymns that I'm going to read out of a book. Well, I'll do the book reviews and then I'll read the hymns. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat now, and I'll check the chat, and then I'll check it again when I'm done with the hymns. Okay, let's see. Go down. My computer's freezing. Okay, thank you. There it goes. $5 towards that. I love that. Yeah. Yes, let's win the lotto, please. I would not be able to do the animal part either. I would not want to sacrifice an animal. And Erica says, where did you get that? Is there a substitute? Oh, the ritual. It's from the, is it the Odyssey? It's in the Odyssey. So any Odyssey book, you should be able to find that in there. And yeah, pork ribs. Yeah, yes, you could definitely, you could put the whole rib in there, feed all the bugs and everything, or whatever wants to dig it up. And black wool would be very cool. I think you can get black wool, and you can always dye it as well, especially if you're using natural dyes. I have charcoal powder. So sometimes I stick that on stuff. It gets all over my hands. You can just probably use like regular charcoal ash. But I also just have I even have like edible grade powder. And you can put that on stuff, and it's just charcoal. So it can definitely go in the ground. Thank you. I love my coin as well. Gecko. I love that. What's your gecko's name? Yeah, I've got 2 dogs too. I really want 3 dogs so I can have like the 3-headed dog. My husband says no. So 2 it is. Maybe one day. Okay, so let me do the book review. So I have 3 books on Hades. Okay, so this one is Hades, and it is called Master of Death and the Infernal Regions. It's by Monte, I'm trying to read it on my screen, Plaisance. It's probably backwards for you, I apologize. And this is a really thin book. It's super small. And actually, I think this is a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. It is from the Church of Thessaly Pantheon series. So they are, I've never worked with them. I just got this book on Amazon. But they are a group of Greek I don't know, witches. I want to say they're witches, but maybe they're not. But they are some type of spiritualist that really works with the various Greek pantheon, and they do a lot of research and stuff. And this book is great. It has like, it's short, so it's not overwhelming. I have it just like underlined everywhere with like all the stuff that speaks to me. And it really is such a great overview. It has everything that you need. It has like all the epithets of Hades, like all the names of them. He has so many of wealth, of the underworld, host of many, savior of the dead, ruler of many, the wealthy one, unchallengeable, laden with death, unable to be bribed. So those are different names. And it actually has it like in, I don't know if you can see that, but it's like in Greek, like in the Greek language and everything too, which I think is very cool because you can draw that out if you want. And it has all of the hymns. It has spells in here. There's so much. So I think this is a great one. It's got tons of recipes. I think this actually might have that same ritual. Yeah, the ritual with the petitions in there. It definitely, it has a lot. I think it might have that same one with the, no, it doesn't. It's not in this book. I thought maybe the one from the Odysseus was in there. But yeah, this is a great book. Highly recommend it. If you really want to know just stuff about Hades and you don't want to read a lot, this is the book. It's only, it doesn't have page numbers. Can you believe that? No page numbers, but it's it's not very big. It's 50 pages max. Great book. It has everything you need, and it's very thorough. Like there's no fluff. It's just great. This one is called Host of Many. This one's okay. I will say I probably am not even going to keep it. I like this book, but I wouldn't really strongly recommend it. It's actually it has a bunch of stories and poems and things that other people have written. And so if you're interested in like knowing how other people work with Hades, I think this is great for that. But just kind of learning about Hades, I would say no, because it's just more how other people practice. I've not read the whole thing. I've read probably definitely more than 50%. Sometimes like if I just want some inspiration, I kind of use it more like bibliomancy, and I'll just kind of open and be like, okay, whose poem and story is this? So very different style book. This book, I have not read all the way. I'm actually about halfway through, and I love this book. I think this book is fantastic. It's called Hades, Myth, Magic, and Modern Devotion by Jamie Wagner. It's one of the Llewellyn books. This book is where I got some of those quotes from. This is really, it's a modern take. So the difference between these two books is this one is a lot more kind of based off of antiquity, and how like people in Greece are practicing within like the real Greek traditions. This is more about modern witchcraft and kind of seeing Hades as like, you know, in the modern sense, I guess. I don't really know how to say it. Like that's what it is. But it's a great book. It starts off each section with like in Hades in first person, like kind of giving his own perception of like, okay, here's my story within the myth. So take it all with a grain of salt because that's how that author connects to Hades. So I do think this is a very good book, but I would want you to get your own understanding of how you think of Hades first, because I think it could maybe influence you too much, maybe to start. Because I think it's important that you kind of figure some of the basics out for yourself, whereas that other book, this one, the little book, is a lot more factual. Like it kind of is just more like, this is what it is, this is what it says, here's how you work with them. So it makes you kind of figure that out. Whereas this one sort of maybe holds your hand to get there. And that being said, it's a great book. It is very, very well written. It has everything that you would want to work with Hades is in here. It doesn't have too many like spells and rituals. This one actually has quite a lot in the practical working, but this one, if you want a deeper dive, like this is the book. So, and these are the only 3 books I read on him, but out of these 3, I would recommend it. All right. Yeah, and I'll show all 3 of these books if you want to take like a screenshot. I will try to get all 3 to fit. How about that? Oh, there we go. Okay. All right, so I have a couple of little hymns that I will read, and I did put the page number in my notes. Page 25. Okay. So one of the hymns is actually out of this book that I was just kind of knocking. So I'll read that one first. And this was written by somebody named Rebecca Buchanan. He is the silent king, his name unspoken. From his deep-rooted throne, he rules, solemn, somber, Lord of the Grave. So that is the Hymn to Hades number 5 by Rebecca Buchanan. And I think these are really great to use for workings that you want to do. You know, these already have a lot of other people potentially using them, especially in like a bigger book. So there's kind of that egregorical magic behind it. And they're, I think, a great starting place. So if you want to like write these down, or I'll write them down and put them in the chat, so that you have them. And you know, then I think they're a great starting place to just kind of start working with the deity, or if you find another one online or something. And then you can always make it your own. And that's, to me, the most powerful, is like really making something for your own. But I think that's very intimidating for a lot of people. So kind of nice to get started with others. So that was the first one. The second one, and this is, I believe, written by this Jamie Wagoner person again. So this is the other one. Hear me, unseen one, you who are eternally cloaked in mist and shadows, invisible to the eye, yet not, invisible to the heart. I offer honor and praise to thee, called Adonis. I pray you will watch over me with kindly spirit and stealthily might. I ask you to please protect me as I walk above until I descend below, to rest in your fields once more. So I will put both of those in there, and hopefully you like these. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the live. Sorry, it's quite a long one. There was a lot of info. I wanted to get through that. And thank you so much. And for anyone watching on the replay, please put any questions and comments throughout, and I will check this periodically. And anyone watching on YouTube, of course, please put your comments too. Thank you for watching, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the night. Bye.